Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the FLOAUDIO BlueLover. This is the latest from this brand that has been around for just over a year roughly now. Their first product was a single LED known as the color. They then subsequently a couple of months later released a single BA known as the Lily, and now this is a 6 BA per side set known as the BlueLover. Anyway, this is the box, and in good FLOAUDIO fashion, it's as simple as you can possibly imagine. Okay, really basic. I chose the version that brought two different cables because on their AliExpress store you have various options of what you want in terms of accessories. If you want tips, if you want a case, if you want, and so I bought the one that brought the case and that brought the additional higher quality cable, let's put it that way. Okay, the case excuse me, the case is this case. All right, basic, nothing too fancy. It does its job, and that's that. Anyway, let me just get this out of the way here. As for the basic specs of the BlueLover, it's a 6BA set, like I've mentioned. The BAs in question, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe are 22.955s, 29.689, and then 33.518s. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the setup, and it's two of each. The shell is a very nice shell. It's not a big shell. It's very nicely designed. It's actually got a nice faceplate on it, 2-pin connector. It fits very nicely. It does benefit from using tips that will allow a deeper insertion, I'll tell you that much. And the shell is semi-transparent and of high quality, and you can actually look inside of it and see some of the crossover components and so on. So it's a nice looking IEM. Its selling price is about $130, give or take. Obviously this is not the stock cable. The stock cables are fine, I guess, but this is not. I wanted to use a nicer cable. This is a nice HDK cable. I've mentioned it before. This one and the KBE are basically the same cable, and I've used this cable now quite often lately because it yields some nice results. And what more can I say about the BlueLover? Well, it's stock graph, or the graph that they say that it does, it's more or less what I got. Okay, although I did notice that it benefited from the use of some impedance adapters. These are from Venture Electronics. This one is a 50 ohm and it's a balanced one, and this is a 25 ohm. I tried both of them extensively and I opted for the 25 ohm as being the better option. In stock format, and what basically changes as well the most by using the impedance adapters is it's got a really nice bass curve focused on the sub bass. It's a tucked bass curve, and it basically is flat by 200 hertz. So it's very much along the lines of what you see on the variations and some other IEMs which like this tucked style of bass. And then in stock format, the way the pin again is done is a little bit too relaxed in my opinion, and it makes for a slightly darker sounding IEM. By using the impedance adapter, it opens it up. It, in my opinion, balances it out more with what you have in terms of sub bass energy, because it's got a little bit of it's got a focus on the sub bass as opposed to mid bass, and it just makes it overall more balanced out in terms of its reproduction. It does bring with that usage of the impedance adapter one drawback, which is that you notice more the BA timbre. Okay, but anyway, when I show you now the graphs next, you'll understand. In terms of comparisons, I've only got two IEMs here. One is priced more or less the same price, which is the the KZ AS24, roughly $110 give or take. It's a 12 BA, so twice the amount of BAs. And the other one is the AudioSense DT600. And why the AudioSense DT600, since it costs $220, $230 more or less? Well, because this and the BlueLover have almost the same kind of curve. Okay, they have basically the same style of frequency graph. The difference between the two is the polishness, it's the execution, it's how clean, it's how well executed then either one of them is done. The AudioSense DT600, if you recall, is an IEM that without the impedance adapter as well sounds a little bit strange, sounds a little bit you know, like it's missing a lot, and its potential is not really fully realized. But then once you use a 75 or an 80 ohm impedance adapter like they've actually provided as well, the DT600 becomes an absolute beast. I mean, it was my first, let's say, serious BA set, and a set that I still like using from time to time, and you know, keeping it there present when I do certain comparisons. Like the Flow Audio, it's also got that tucked kind of bass, and then the mids, upper mids, and treble are very much along the lines of the BlueLover, just more energetic. However, for some reason which I can't really explain, although more energetic, you don't notice as much the BA timbre, and I attribute that to perhaps the quality of the actual BAs inside, and just maybe, that the crossover network is just a little bit more well designed or well put together. Excuse me. The reality is they both use basically the same formula, and you know, they sound similar up to a certain volume, and then obviously past that point, then you start seeing things falling apart, and then changing how they sound. As for the AS24, I reviewed this recently now, and I think it is probably one of the better KZ sets up to date. The inclusion of these tuning switches that they have both in the bottom and in the top of the IEM, one messing with the bass frequencies, the other two, well, in this case, the other panel of switches changes or modifies the highs and the extra high and the ultra highs, let's say, in terms of their intensity. But the truth is, the inclusion of those switches has enabled for a very versatile sounding IEM, and one that is actually quite pleasant to listen to. It does testament to what a BA is supposed to do, so super detailed, I mean, loads of detail, loads of resolution. Technically, it's very, very capable. And although there is some BA timbre, the truth is this, it actually is, there's less BA presence, let's put it that way, than there is on the BlueLover, all right? Let me now carry on now describing the sound here a little bit better. So the bass, as I started mentioning earlier, it's a tucked bass, it's got nice sub-bass focus, but then you do notice that it lacks that slam that is sometimes needed to complement then the mids nicer, like House of Groove from Eugene Groove. It misses that impact. It doesn't have it there as well as, for example, the DT600 that has the same style of tuning, or the AS24. The AS24 is probably the one of the three that has the most. In terms of the mids and male and female vocals, they sound fine as well, very much volume dependent. Although the perception I get is that they sound slightly, how can I put this? It's not that they sound backwards. They sound thin to a certain extent because there isn't that mid-bass slam that would be ideal. But at the same time, they kind of sound a little bit recessed. It's an awkward one to explain actually, because you listen to it you listen to whatever songs. I mean, you listen to House of Groove as well on the DT600. You also notice that kind of slight recession, okay, but it's more, it ends up having more musicality. It just sounds more pleasant, more engaging, and that BA timbre is definitely not as noticeable here on the DT600 as it is on the Lover, or for that matter on the AS24. The AS24, there were some people that complained about BA timbre, and okay, fine, but it is nothing that I found to be offensive. And if I have to compare these two, this has got no BA timbre, let's put it that way, okay? In terms of the upper mids and highs, it gets a little bit hot there, even with, without the impedance adapter. it's the completely polar opposite. It's too dark. It will be fine because it won't fatigue. You won't notice as much that BA timbre, but it's just too closed in my opinion. And that's why ultimately I opted for the 25 ohm, because it kind of was the best compromise. Okay. With the impedance adapter, the highs, they are clean, they are detailed, but they just sound too pushed, too in your face. Okay. So there's a dual thing here. On the one hand, we have a slight recession of the mids, or a perceived recession of the mids, and on the other hand, you have a push, a highly energetic upper mids and treble, which is also helping out with that feeling of recession that you get, and it just makes it sound very V, very V. Okay. And although you also get that style of V tuning on the DT600, it doesn't sound as bad, or well, bad is not the right word. It doesn't sound as noticeable as it does on the BlueLover. Of the three, the one that for me ends up having the best coherence across the board of all the frequencies is the AS24. Fair enough, the AS24 does have all these switches that will allow for a lot of tuning, but it is the one that is the most balanced out, unquestionably. Technically, yes, it's a very capable IEM, but once again, very much like I said earlier, it is very much volume dependent. If you start cranking the volume, things just fall apart somehow, and it doesn't. While on the DT600 you increase the volume and everything scales very nicely and it maintains its composure. The same thing goes for the AS24. Actually, the AS24 even sounds better when you increase the volume. The BlueLover kind of goes a little bit backward. It almost seems like it starts to struggle. It starts to reaching a point where it is not in its comfort zone. It is something to keep in mind. And that's it, guys. I mean, there's really not much more that I can say about the BlueLover. The color, when it initially came out, the single DD, I was perhaps a little bit too hard on it, but afterwards and with giving it a bit more time and trying different tips, I actually discovered that it wasn't a bad IM. The single DD actually was pretty decent, and it gave us kind of a blonde BLO3 sound. It was actually quite nice. The Lily was a very pleasant surprise. The Lily, I have to admit, I was surprised with its performance. And the BlueLover, when I first saw the graph, I said to myself, okay, this might be a very good and solid alternative to the DT600, since we are talking about $100 difference in price here. But having now listened to it more carefully and with more detail and playing around with different sources and what have you, I have found that yes, although it is a decent sounding IEM, it has a few issues. First of all, it has the issue known as the KZ AS24, which in my opinion makes more sense to get than the BlueLover. And secondly, with regards to itself, in more detail, the BA timbre is just too much. It just sounds too much like a BA, and it especially at higher volumes where it loses its manners, it gets a little bit overly intense and fatiguing. And that's it, guys. I'll show you another graphs and we'll wrap it up. All right, you take care. Hi guys, and welcome to the graph section for the BlueLover. Let me start by showing you the BlueLover, the FLOAUDIO BlueLover in its stock, let's say, presentation. As you can see, that it's got that tucked bass with a focus on the sub bass, very relaxed, mids and so on. But then the pin gain and everything here is way too gentle, and coupled with the fact that you have quite a bit of bass energy from behind, it just darkens up everything. There should be a little bit more life here, and to that extent, then that's why I started experimenting with the impedance adapters, and ultimately the impedance adapter of 25 ohms is the one that I found worked the best. I've normalized it at 1K. As you can see, I've still maintained that bass stuck. Everything is basically still fat, but then you get a more prominent pin again. A slight little dip after the peak at about 2.5 maintains itself, and some extension past 10K. So this is, in my opinion, a way more overall balanced sound. It sounds more satisfying. Yes, you do notice there's a lack of a little bit of mid-bass punch, which reflects itself then in this part of the spectrum, sounding a little bit overly energetic at times. But it's not even the overly energetic that's the issue. It's just the fact that it sounds too much like a BA. You know, that it's very, very noticeable. And when you compare it, for example, like I mentioned, to the DT600, which is the graph that I'm putting up now, you can see that graphically they are very similar, same style of bass, even more energy in the mids and upper mids and highs. The reality is, the one compared to the other, there's a very big difference in the way that they are executed. The DT600 sounds just smoother, more polished up. It sounds, yes, that you do notice as well that lack of mid-bass punch there, but it just sounds more polished, and as a consequence of that, you don't notice as much the BA timbre. Both of them are very much V-shaped, very much V-shaped, although for some reason, like I said, on the DT600, and I really assume this basically the quality of the hardware. It doesn't, you don't notice that BA timbre as much, very very little by comparison, and you don't get somehow that feeling of the male vocals being as recessed as they are with the case of the Flow. Okay, and then finally the graph I'm putting up now in black. Actually, let me change it to blue, see if this will show itself a little bit better. There we go. That's the graph of the AS24, the KZ, also again normalized at 1 kilohertz, and definitely you can see it's the one that has the most mid bass. So that balance between sub bass and mid bass, I think it's the most well done out of the three. And then the execution of the mids and highs, in my opinion, is really faultless. I mean, let me just quickly just show you the AS24. The AS24 has got a really, this is the setting that I use, which is one of the panels all in the one position, the second panel all in the zero position. It just sounds faultless like this, really. It sounds really, really nice. The bass is not as warm as what it as what it might seem by looking at it over here. It sounds very, very good. There's a little bit of BA tonality associated, but very little. Very good technically, so in terms of soundstage, imaging, detail retrieval, very, very good. And when I compare it just to with the BlueLover, sorry, not this one, when I compare it with the BlueLover, although sorry, it might seem that in the mids there could be some similarities. No, there's definitely no similarities. That they are very different. Yes, because of the setting that I'm using on the AS24, the treble and that air sounds a little bit more recessed as compared to the BlueLover, but it's smoother and it doesn't let itself be known as much by its BA timbre as the BlueLover does. I mean, look, ultimately, do I wreck the BlueLover? Not really. I can't really wreck the BlueLover because, you know, the AS24 is a better sounding IEM. And besides being a better sounding IEM, the versatility of the switches allow for you to adjust it more to your personal taste. And the BlueLover, honestly, if you don't use the impedance adapter, you're not going to like it. So if you add on to the if you add on to the $120, $125 price tag, the impedance adapter, another $25, we're talking now $150, $160. You know, it starts becoming a lot of money for an IEM that honestly doesn't have any real standout thing to it, besides, you know, being well built. It looks good, I just feel that maybe the tuning should have been just a little bit more polished up. If they had tuned the IEM, just polished it up a little bit more, I think we would, well, I would at least have a different opinion about it, and would be suggesting it probably as an alternative to the AS24. Alright, anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this little review of mine. As always, like and subscribe, ask any questions if you want. Thank you, take care, bye bye.